Okay, welcome everybody. This is Rami with Spigot. Thanks for taking some time to join us for our office hours session today. I'm joined today by Mo, who is one of our most highly sought after technical folks in the company. And he's going to be spending some time talking about our public access settings, in particular associated with self-registration. Couple of things before we get started in terms of housekeeping. Mo will probably take somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes, and the remaining time will be open for Q&A. If you've got a question during the presentation, feel free to enter it in the webinar Q&A feature, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your line. Lastly, we're going to record this session, and it'll be available in the Help Center shortly after today's, within the next day or so. And with that being noted, Mo, let me turn it over to you, and you're ready to go.
Great, thank you very much, Rami. Thank you everyone for joining, and welcome to Spigot Office Hours. For the agenda today, I am looking to briefly cover what does external challenge imply, and then we'll go through how to configure an instance for external users access. We'll also discuss how we can configure the sign-in page to highlight some key messages, and how to configure the registration form to capture the key attributes we want to gather from our external audience. Following that, I'm looking to briefly share some common considerations and recommendations that you might want or might need to think about before launching your external challenge. I'll then go through a demonstration before we open it up for Q&A, but as Rami mentioned, please feel free to raise your hand whenever you have a question during this presentation. So having said that, let's get started. External challenges and what do they imply? So external challenges are challenges that are run for audience members that are external to you, so external to the client hosting the challenge. Our clients have launched external challenges to vendors, to business partners, and also to general public. However, one very important thing to note is that public sites and single sign-on instances of a Spigot should not be placed together for security reasons. External challenges must always be run on a separate instance to your internal instance. Now let's talk a little bit about the available or the registration mode options available for you. Spigot offers 3 registration mode options. Before I cover how the instant access can be configured for external audience, it's important to highlight that the registration modes are implemented at the site level during the site setup. Therefore, we recommend that you determine your preferred registration option before you start configuring the challenge site. Now, let me take you through each of the registration mode options available for you. The first registration option is the open. This registration mode is the least secure mode that we offer for the customers. In this mode, any person can register in the application and access the challenge site. So as a user, you enter the registration page, you fill up a form, type a password, and you will then have an instant access to the challenge site. You do not require any invitation to register. Having said that, the administrator, however, can still restrict access to email pattern defined in the user section setting. The second registration option available to you is the admin invite. Now, this registration mode is actually very restrictive. In fact, this is the most restrictive setting that the application offers. In this mode, any person can register in the application with an invitation sent by the admin from the register invite users option in the administration section. So if a user arrives at the registration page without a confirmation number in the URL, or if they enter incorrect confirmation number, they will receive an error message, invalid confirmation code, as soon as they click the submit button. Now, similar to the open registration mode, the email address needs to comply with the email pattern defined in the users section. The third registration mode option that I want to cover today is the public. This offers an intermediate level of security. In this mode, any person can register an application, but they cannot provide a password upon registration. This is intended to validate that the person registering to access the application is the actual owner of the email entered in the registration form. This registration mode helps you ensure the ownership of the email by forcing the user to follow the reset password link sent in the email when they register. So that way, only user that has access to the email used to register will be able to set a new password for the account. And one thing here to keep in mind is that once you determine your preferred access mode, please submit a support ticket for our support team to make the necessary changes in the back end to support your site access needs. Now remember one thing, that regardless of the preferred access mode, you can always restrict access to the defined email pattern that you add on the user section on the admin panel. We have an increasing number of clients who look to extend their innovation and engagement activities beyond the boundaries of the organization. And I'm actually excited to share that as part of our next 4.2 fall release, we are actually offering a social login capability that all clients will be able to access. The social login will allow users to create accounts and authenticate with the 3 key social account providers in Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn. These services will be available to all users accessing the login page, as you can see here on the screenshot. The icons will be displayed here under the registration section. Now, all users choosing to register with social login will be able to re-authenticate or log in with this method each time they return to the Spigot site. And you'll also be able to use the new capability in conjunction with the existing username and password authentication methods. Now, let me talk a little bit about how you can customize the sign-in page. When you configure the application for external crowd access, you might want to consider configuring the sign-in page to include some key messaging that you want to make visible to your crowd before they sign in or before they register to access the site. For example, you can add a brief welcome message, add a support contact details for users experiencing problem to register or sign in. Maybe you want to add a link to terms and conditions, or simply just add a logo or a graphic to this page. As an administrator, you can configure the sign-in page by browsing to the administration, display and branding, and display settings, sign-in page information. In the example demonstrated in this screenshot, I have configured the sign-in page to include a link to the privacy policy. The message I added then is displayed under the sign-in form, as you can see on the right-hand side. So in the previous slide, I covered how you can configure the sign-in page. However, it's very important that you determine in advance what key information and data you want to capture from your external audience before they access and participate in the challenge. Maybe you want to ask yourself what attributes and data will be important to study, analyze, and report on during and after the challenge is closed. For example, do you want to capture the country, the city, or the state of the participants? Do you want to capture their company? Does capturing their job title help when you run a report on all participants? Do you want to know if they already use your product or services? So the registration page has 4 points of information that are always required. That's the first name, last name, username, and email. Once you decide what additional attributes you want to gather from your participants, please enter a support ticket listing the fields that you would like to add, highlighting which fields are required, which fields are optional. And our Spigot support team will add the new fields under the user registration question box, but will also map the fields to the site's database. Now, as an administrator, it's also possible for you to create your own additional fields using the HTML within the user registration question box. However, you will still have to raise a support ticket to have the new fields mapped within the database. Next, I want to briefly cover some common consideration and recommendation for external challenges. After you have your challenge set to the preferred registration mode of open, public, or admin invite, you want to start thinking about how you want your audience to interact with the challenge and each other's. Here are some common considerations that we encourage our clients to take into account when designing the process of their external challenge. Terms and conditions. Ensure that you have updated the terms and conditions for external crowd and that your legal is happy with the terms and conditions going public. Decide how you want the user to log in. Are you using a homepage on the intranet side or the Spigot side? Another thing to read about or to think about, sorry, are users able to read and browse the site without doing any activity until they register and sign in? Or do you actually want users to be directed to the login page and then they have to register and sign in before they read any information about the challenge? Site configuration, how do you want your audience to use the site? Do you want it to be open where users can view each other's ideas, collaborate and vote on their favorite ideas with auto graduation, progressing ideas based on the crowd input? Or is it a black box process with ideas only visible to owner? This is for external crowd, so make sure the challenge question is engaging, is clear and simple to understand. Remember, this is external site and it's likely that this is the first time your participants interact with the software. So it's important to have a how it works page to explain the process flow or ideas, a brief tab where participants can read more about the challenge, and any additional pages you believe might be useful for participants to read before participating or before posting ideas. Additional things that you want to consider are the comms plan and the incentive plan. Think about how you're engaging the audience. What is the cadence? What are the expectations? What communications channels are you using? Is there an incentive plan? And is the incentive plan appropriate for external audience? And how are you communicating the incentive plan? And talk about the incentive plan, how you're going to reward the audience. For public challenge, you might want to ensure that it's not possible for participants to game the incentive plan and might want to avoid giving out prizes to most ideas submitted or top collaborators. Instead, you might want to find ways to reward the most thoughtful ideas or to do a random drawing for participants active during a certain period. Next, some recommendation here from experience working with a number of clients on external launches. Try to keep the site as simple as possible. Your audience should not be looking around to find where to go to register or sign in or post an idea. Try to limit the number of clicks and steps a user needs to engage and participate on a challenge. Limit the self-registration questions. We understand that in some cases you might have a lot of information that you want to capture from your audience at the time of registration, but see if you could move some of these questions to the idea submission form. Remember, the key thing here is to get the audience to sign up and get into the site to interact with the challenge. One thing you want to avoid is for people to land on the registration form, then be discouraged by the number of questions that they need to respond to in order to access the site. Another good recommendation I can make here for public challenges is to make the site viewable without login. One of the great things about Spigot is that it allows you to set access control not only on the challenge level, but also on each of the challenge site pages. So have the users land on a home page where they can read more about the challenge, maybe they can read the question, maybe the how it works page, the type of ideas you're looking for, the incentive. And if they want to view posted ideas or post their own ideas, collaborate or vote, they must then complete the registration form and accept terms and conditions. Required login. Now, if you actually want to lock the challenge to a list of users, then remember here to change the access settings to private required login. That will mean that users can't even access any of the pages before they register and sign in to access the site. Language, try to keep it to one language. If you want to launch a global challenge in multiple languages, then we recommend that you configure a separate challenge for each language. Finally, make the site look as nice and as clean as possible. One thing we always encourage is to try using a video and graphic instead of text and HTML. Now, let me move into the demo, a quick demo here that I wanted to take you through for two different examples of external demo sites. I'm using the demo site here to present you with a challenge that is set to public with no restrictions to viewing any site content at all. Users can land on the challenge homepage, they can read the challenge question. However, if they try to participate, so they can read the challenge question, they can actually see all of the most liked ideas, they can see who the top innovators are, they can see all of the activities occurring on this challenge. They can actually browse to read more about the challenge, read a little bit about the background here, but they actually decide to post their own idea, then the system will direct them to the login page unless they've already logged in. So if they have not logged in, they will direct them to the sign-in page where they can either sign in or create an account if they haven't registered yet. Here's another example from a project I recently worked on. This client wanted to be more restrictive by hiding ideas and comments, but still wanted to share some key information about the challenge before people register and access the site to participate. As a user here, you could land on this custom page. You can read the challenge question. You can read a little bit about the challenge. You can read about the type of ideas that we're looking for or the client is looking for. Now that you've read about the challenge and you're interested, you can click to register on this challenge, and you can then click to log in and access and participate in the challenge. The last thing I wanted to quickly cover here is something I covered in the slide. Here is the sign-in page. If you actually want to customize this, remember what I covered earlier, you could have logged in here using another window as an administrator to this challenge. And by going to administration, display and branding, and then click on display setting, I could actually start configuring the sign-in page. So in the sign-in page information, I've added a message here. If you have trouble logging in, please contact your program administrators on support@example.com. Right, I can make this a hyperlink. So actually prompt me. Once I click on it, actually take me straight into my email to send my email. I could also add sign-in page description. I could add any graphics here, I could add any text. So for instance, I can go ahead and say, by registering. Again, I can hyperlink this to a separate page, or I could actually even add a PDF file and link it to that text, so that when users click on it, they download the PDF file and they can read the privacy policy. Now, if I actually submit this by going back to the challenge sign-in page, you can see now that this information have been added to the sign-in description, as well as the sign-in information section. So that's all I wanted to cover today. Over to you here, Rami, for any questions.
Great, thank you, Mo. Appreciate all the great information. With that being said, are there any questions related to this topic for Mo? If so, just feel free to raise your hand, or you can put it in the Q&A. If you raise your hand, I'll unmute you. Otherwise, you can put it in the Q&A, and we can take it from there. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any at the moment, Mo, so well done. What we'll do is we'll stay on for the next few minutes in case there's any other topics or questions that come up. In the interim, I'll go ahead and pause for a moment. Oh, looks like we have something in the chat window. And let's see here. All right. So the question is, how easily can you switch from current login registration to social media? What would the process be if people wanted to switch? Mo, Patty, either one of you want to take that, or?
Yeah, from my perspective, that's actually a very good question. And well, I'm sure that very soon, as soon as the new release is out, I just want to remind you here that this is part of our next release. So we won't be able to do that just yet, but the next release will be available soon. We'll be able to add the social login capability to your external instance. In terms of answering your question, all you need to do is really raise a ticket. Correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, for us to make the changes on the back end, and we'll make these icons visible on your sign-in page.
Well, Patty, did you want to jump in? Okay. Yeah, so as Mo pointed out, it is you can raise a ticket into support, and our team will handle that. Again, that is a part of our next release, and we can take it from there. So, Patty, did you have anything you wanted to add there? Okay, great. Any other questions?
I think there was another question there, Rami.
Okay.
Q&A.
Yeah, let's see here. I don't see it at the moment.
Yeah, it disappeared for me as well, but I think the question was, if a user wanted to change their login, do they need to be unregistered and registered back in? I think the question has just been raised again. So the question here, Patty and Rami, relates to the social media login. If they want to move from the current login to the social media, how does that work?
Mo, this is Patty. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Patty.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Sorry about that. I don't believe that there's anything that we need to do for the new release to enable the social media. It'll automatically be included if you set it to public. I will double check on that. But as you know, we're in the early stages of the next release, so we'll find out more information, and it'll be available in the release notes when the release comes out as to how you would move. Again, these are public sites, so they're not going to be anything that you're going to be accessing through SSO. So it would be up to the individual how they would want to access the site, whether they want to use their Facebook ID or your Twitter ID, whatever, or if you wanted to log in with just an email address. So it's up to the end user, and I don't believe we have to do anything to enable it.
Great, thank you, Patty.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll give everybody a couple more minutes in case they come up with anything, and we're happy to share what we know at this point. Okay, it looks like we've fielded all of the questions. So with that being said, thank you, Mo, for sharing your insights today on the external challenge configurations. Patty, thank you for helping us with a little bit more on the upcoming social login as well. as with anything, you can find additional information within our help center. And of course, our support team is always there to help answer questions. And we will post this recording within the next few days within the help center there. And thank you for joining us. And we look forward to having you in our next installment. Patty, do you happen to know when the next item scheduled? I think it may be in the help center, actually. There you are. Go ahead.
I'm having trouble with my mute today, obviously. Our next installment is going to be on how to develop your challenge pipeline, and that's on September 19th.
Perfect. Thank you so much for digging up that information, Patty. I appreciate the help. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on the 19th. Have a good rest of your day, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.